Hi everyone, and welcome to Physics 267, Probability, Statistics, and Data Analysis for Physics and Astronomy. This is the first time this course has ever been offered, and I hope everybody gets to enjoy it and also learn how to use programming skills to perform data analysis on different examples in physics and astronomy. So before we begin the lecture, all I'm going to do is go through the structure of these slides first. At the bottom of all of my PowerPoints, there's going to be a flow of information. We always start off with the goals of the lecture itself, basically what we're going to cover throughout the next few slides and the presentation, as well as the objectives of the lecture. Afterwards, we're going to go through some introductory content to get you used to what we're going to be talking about in the main content. We're going to teach the main concepts once we get to the main content section. If there are examples and applications, we will move on to that at the end of each lecture. And then at the very end, we're going to summarize all of the key concepts that we've covered throughout the short recordings. So to start off, in this chapter, we're going to go through some goals. We're going to go through basically an introduction of this course, as well as the teaching team, myself and your TAs. We're going to go through why Physics 267 is important. And we definitely want to go through what you need for this course, resources, as well as making sure you have access to Jupyter Notebook and some downloaded Python libraries through Anaconda, or a local install if you prefer. Afterwards, we're just going to go straight into some basic terminology for statistics. Okay, so as an introduction, we want to go through the course outline and syllabus, the teaching team, the grading distribution, key deliverables, and weekly schedule, as well as the term project. So first of all, you can find the course outline and syllabus on Learn. I would suggest reading the whole thing, just to make sure you know exactly what is required of you for each type of deliverable, as well as to know the different topics that we'll cover throughout the course. And there's quite a lot of topics to cover, so even though this first couple of weeks is fairly slow-paced, we'll start picking up the pace within week 2 or 3. So the goal of this whole course is to be able to analyze data from examples in physics and astronomy. And the overall process is really to start with the terminology so we can use that lingo, and then go on to probability, then statistics, then data analysis, and apply all of that towards examples in data collection through different fields of physics. So with these recorded lectures, these are accompanied by what I call Jupyter workbooks instead of Jupyter notebooks. I created a bunch of files, IPYNB files, and they have all of the written content that you can't really find in the PowerPoint, so they serve as the textbook for this course. It is mandatory to read them, and to try and encourage you to read them, I have practice problems at the end of each of these Jupyter workbooks that you can try yourself and submit at the end of each week for completion grades. So it's just to make sure you're staying on top of the content and to make sure that you're actually working through the problems throughout the week. After you have gone through those Jupyter workbooks and these pre-recorded lectures, which are optional, I have live lectures that are run through WebEx. These take place based on the schedule on Learn and through the registrar. They will be recorded, so if you miss a lecture, that's totally fine. It'll also be posted on Learn afterwards, usually within 24 hours. Outside of that, I want to talk about office hour and support. All of this is run through a Discord server that I've set up for the class. If you don't have Discord, that's totally fine. You can use email to reach me directly or use Microsoft Teams. If you do choose to use Discord, though, it's very useful to get connected with your peers, to work on project ideas together, to collaborate for assignments, even though there's no copying, and to just submit tickets for the teaching team to look at on a regular basis if you have questions or any issues that you need to report regarding grading. So let's introduce the teaching team for this term. I'll be your instructor. I'm Brenda Lee. You can reach me at brenda.lee@uwaterloo.ca or through Discord. I'll also have office hours upon request, or if there are too many people requesting office hours, I'll probably set up regular office hours at that point through a poll. There are 2 teaching assistants this term, Nanchin May, or Nancy, and Irina Buktiva. and you can reach them by email or also through Discord. We kindly ask that you don't reach out to the teaching team through direct messages on Discord. Just use the Discord server and the custom ticketing system so that everything is kept confidential and we can at least follow up individually and have a record of it as an entire team instead of just one-on-one. If you do have any private matters that you want to discuss outside of Discord, please just email me directly. So when do you reach out? Usually you might want to reach out about clarifying concepts, parts of the course, or asking for accommodations. Those would go to me directly, your instructor. If you have questions about assignments and grading, that's going to go through to Nancy and Arena. For all other matters, you can always direct them to me, especially if you're not sure. But what I ask is that if you do have any questions, reach out early on before it's too late for us to do anything about it. Now on to the most important part of this course, the grading distribution. There are several components to this course, and the first thing you'll notice is that 10% is completion only. The reason I have it as so is because I want everybody to have a safe and easy environment to learn, but also reward everybody for the efforts you put into completing content throughout the week. So at the beginning of the week, what I'll be doing is releasing these lectures in video format, slideshow format, as well as chapter notes. Those chapter notes are called Jupyter workbooks because they have the chapter notes at the beginning, and at the bottom, there's the practice problems. So your job is to read through the Jupyter notebook and the chapter notes, watch the videos if they help you reinforce the content. Keep in mind, the videos are there to help you, to give you a different style of content delivery to accompany the chapter notes. So after you've gone through the chapter notes, work on the practice problems and finish those practice problems and submit them by the end of the week. And that will be a completion grade for each week for each of the chapter notes that are available that week. Usually there will be 1 to 2 chapters per week. So if there are 2 chapters in a week, then you'll have to submit the 2 workbooks. At the beginning of the next week, there's going to be a readiness quiz. It's multiple choice. Basically, these quizzes are going to help you prepare for the multiple choice component of the midterm and final assessment and help you judge your level of comfort with the material. So for all of for the 10%, all of that is completion only. Of course, because it's completion only, there's no going back if you do not submit it. If you miss out on a quiz or a workbook submission, there won't be any late penalties. You won't be able to get that mark back. The next few key deliverables are all worth grades, numerical grades. So assignments, they're going to take place on an approximate weekly basis. There will be no assignments during breaks, holidays, or during the weeks of the midterm and final assessment. So the 15% of the assignments will be split up between however many assignments we have. The midterm assessment and the final assessment are 25% each. They are both considered cumulative, the reason being you can't really do data analysis without knowing probability and statistics. So we have to say that it's cumulative. There will definitely be more of a focus on just data analysis and statistics for the final assessment, but you will still have to have some knowledge of probability. Finally, we have the term project. I created the term project because I thought it was very, very useful for your future as scientists. So it's 25% of your grade, and there's a 3% bonus as well. I'm going to go through that in a later slide. But the term project will test your knowledge of this entire course and have you apply that knowledge to a specific field of physics of your choice. So because we're learning about probability, statistics, and data analysis, for your term project, I will be presenting you with various different types of data sets from different fields of physics. Your job is to pick one data set from one field of physics that you enjoy or want to learn more about, like quantum physics, or you can even do astronomy, or you can do biophysics. There will be different types of data sets provided to you, and you just pick one of them. And from that one data set, you're going to apply several different statistical analysis methods and data analysis methods to interpret, not just interpret, to present, describe, infer, and interpret and predict any patterns based on your analysis. For a 3% bonus, apart from writing the report for your data analysis term project, the 3% bonus is a presentation. So I would want you to create a PowerPoint slide or some sort of presentation with an audio or a video recording to accompany your submission for that 3% bonus. The term project will be done either individually or in groups of 2 to 3. It's up to you to decide what works best for you. Okay, so key deliverables and weekly schedule. What I want to go through is what your schedule should be throughout the week. Because this is a remote course, a lot of this is self-paced with some guidance along the way. So at the beginning of the week, Mondays and Tuesdays, read the Jupyter workbooks and try the practice problems yourself and complete the readiness quiz starting next week. And that's going to be based on the content from the previous week. In the middle of the week, try to work on the assignments, and they are done individually. You are allowed to collaborate and just discuss problems with others, but you're not allowed to present solutions and you're not allowed to copy, or else there will be Policy 71 violations. On Thursdays, we have our live lectures through WebEx. These are all going to be recorded, especially if you can't attend, and posted to Learn, usually within 24 hours after the event takes place. At the end of the week, basically on Fridays at midnight, submit your Jupyter workbooks and submit your assignments. There's a difference between the two. With the Jupyter workbooks, submit them before midnight, and if it passes midnight, there is no more chance to submit the Jupyter workbook because it is just for a completion grade. For the assignments, after Friday midnight, you will have a late penalty throughout the weekend if you choose to submit the assignment late. And of course, throughout the term, whenever you have time, start to work on the term project. You probably will not be able to start working on it until around the time of the midterm, at which point you will have all the necessary tools as well as details for the term project to get started on it. So just a quick overview of the term project. It's basically called, the title of the course, Probability, Statistics, and Data Analysis for Physics and Astronomy. When you move on to different fields of physics and astronomy, and if you go into graduate studies or even in the workforce, you're going to encounter a wide range of experiments as scientists, or a lot of different types of data sets and measurable observations that you'll have to work with. And so for this project, you can work individually or in groups of 2 to 3. You can find your groups right away at the beginning of the term, or let me know at the beginning of the term if you wish to work individually. You will then be asked to select which field of physics and astronomy you're interested in, as well as the data set that you're interested in. Then, once you've made that decision, you'll be presented with a unique data set and given context as to how that data was collected, just so that you know what it's about, instead of just getting a random set of numbers. For the project, the main goal is for you to write a report that focuses on analyzing that data that you were assigned. You'll be asked to use at least 4 to 6 different statistical tools to analyze your data. And the 4 to 6 really ranges because if you're working individually, I won't expect as many tests. If you're working in groups, I'll expect a couple more tests from you. You'll also be asked to make predictions and conclusions from your statistical results and to make suggestions for future improvement, especially knowing how the data was obtained. To obtain up to a 3% bonus, you have to submit a recorded presentation, either audio or visual video, alongside your report. So more details will be released in the first few weeks of the term. So in this course, we're going to be using Jupyter Notebook quite a bit. Every week, you'll be downloading a Jupyter Notebook file, an IPYNB file, updating it to do the practice problems, and then resubmitting the Jupyter Notebook file. So it is really important to actually make sure you can use it, and to also make sure you have different Python packages available for use. Now, you can install Jupyter Notebook through Anaconda. It's free. And there's a link to anaconda.com if you want to download everything yourself. You can also have a local install of Python and use other types of software to work with Jupyter Notebook, like Visual Studio or Google Colab. So there's different ways that you can access Jupyter Notebook, and that's up to you. As long as you can download the IPYNB files, work on them, and upload them at the end of the week, then that's fine with me. So if you are using Anaconda, you can head on to the website and you'll be able to see this page for the individual edition of Anaconda. You can either download it for Windows, or if you don't have Windows and have Apple or Linux, just go down to the bottom and there's the 3 logos and you can select which OS you have. So keep in mind that Anaconda is considered a Python distribution. So you're not just getting Python from Anaconda, you're getting a lot more, including Jupyter Notebook, R programming, as well as a bunch of different Python packages and libraries. So that's why I'm recommending it for this course, because we will be requiring multiple different packages from Python to use when we're doing data analysis, just so that we don't have to code everything from scratch. So when you're installing Anaconda, it's going to install some key packages like NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, Pandas, stats models, and Seaborn. So all of these are different packages that we will be requiring you to use throughout the term. If there are any additional packages that we need, we'll just present them one by one as we go on. So keep in mind, Anaconda is exactly as it is marketed as. It's a data science toolkit. So it gives you all the tools that allow you to work with many different packages and libraries for different applications. So having that gives you an all-in-one solution. If you don't want to use Anaconda and want to use a local install of Python, then you are more than welcome to. It just means that you might have to call different packages and install different packages in order to use them for the work throughout this course. So now on to main content. I do want to go through the big picture of this whole course and a quick overall approach to data analysis, as well as start with some statistical definitions of variables in data. So the big picture of data analysis really is, first, we have to define what data analysis is. It's a very wide branch. It's actually the process of collecting, modeling, and analyzing data in order for us to extract insights and make predictions based on your results. So the methods of data analysis require the application of mathematical statistics. So we have to go backwards and learn about statistics before we can even do data analysis. Now for statistics, it's all based on observations and how we infer and interpret these results. In order to do that, we need to understand statistical tests. And in order to understand statistical tests, we have to be familiar with uncertainty and terminology within uncertainty. Probability is actually the language of uncertainty, so it allows us to describe numerically how likely an event is to occur or how likely something is true. So we have to go backwards yet again to understand probability first before we move on to statistical tests. And even before probability, we have to learn about what samples are, what populations are, in order to understand what kind of numbers and experimental units we're working with when we're analyzing probability. So the whole course is structured in a way that we're working backwards in order to understand the big picture of data analysis. So at the very beginning, in the next slide, we're just going to start off with understanding how data is collected and how it's presented and described. So to describe data, we're going to cover a whole bunch of different graphs, and that'll be the next chapter. So an overall approach to data analysis, whenever you're doing an experiment now or in the future, there are various steps that you have to take in order to ensure proper data collection and proper data analysis. So without data analysis, we really don't know how reliable or unreliable our data is. If we don't go through these steps, we wouldn't be able to make accurate predictions about anything. In such cases where we consider others' evidence and others' opinions as evidence, we consider that anecdotal evidence. So, for example, if you have a restaurant that you're trying to go to, or if you're trying to get opinions on restaurants, maybe all of your friends like this particular Italian restaurant, but maybe it's not really to your taste. If you just listen to opinions of your friends and family members, then usually that opinion is biased because friends and family members usually have collected opinions, especially people with same opinions tend to flock together. You also have a very small sample size. And so if you listen to that advice and all of those opinions, we call that as a group anecdotal evidence because it's evidence based on opinions. But we obviously don't want that for science. So in order to get reliable data, we need to be able to go through proper steps to data analysis. So the first one is making sure you have really good experimental design. Formulate your hypothesis first, design an experiment and a model, and also a sampling routine. If you are collecting your data, optimize your collection method and carry out your data collection. Usually when you're collecting data, something that I would always recommend moving forward, not in this course, is to create dummy data. So once you have dummy data, you can go through your data collection method and try to reduce the amount of human error within your experimental design. Next, once you have your data, this is where this course starts. We need to be able to generate statistics to summarize and visualize our data. This is called descriptive statistics, just being able to present your data for people to look at. Next step, once you have presented your data, you can infer results from that data. And we call that inferential statistics or exploratory data analysis. We can discuss patterns, differences, and characteristics about your data. Basically, see if there are two groups that are different and how statistically significant they are. The next step is estimation. You can estimate patterns in the population from your sample. So keep in mind, your sample is going to be from your data collection. The sample that you have should be a representative sample of the entire population. Once you've performed some data analysis on your sample, you can make estimations and good predictions about the population as a whole. Finally, once you have all of that information, you can go through hypothesis testing. So that's being able to apply appropriate tests, statistical tests to determine any causative effects or differences between groups and to find the significance of your results to back up your hypothesis and interpretations. So those are usually the overall steps to data analysis from start to finish. For this course, we're starting at 3 and moving on to 6. So we have a very quick slide that goes through different types of variables and data. The chapter notes go through this in a lot more detail. First, when discussing statistics, we have to introduce the concept of sampling. So remember the method of data collection. When you're collecting data, you clearly want to make predictions and analyze patterns and characteristics of an entire population, basically a large body of measurements. But you can't sample everybody. So when you're collecting a sample, we usually call it a representative sample, a subset of data points from the population that will give you enough information to make predictions about the behavior of the population as a whole. So the whole goal of data analysis is to be able to make those predictions by collecting and analyzing data from that representative sample. Now, a variable is a measurable characteristic that changes and over time, for example, and you can get data points from that variable. So let's say you're measuring temperature. That temperature is considered a variable, and you can get data points out of it. For example, temperature points in Celsius, 27.1, for example. If you can measure one variable from your sample, we call that univariate data because it's one variable coming from one source. If you can measure two variables from your sample, for example, if you have if you're able to measure the temperature and location for one experimental unit, then you have bivariate data. If you can measure 3 or more variables from your sample, then you have multivariate data. And depending on whether you have univariate, bivariate, or multivariate data, we can present those results in various different ways, graphically and numerically. So those are things that we'll go through in the next few chapters. Now, it's very important to know that there are different types of data as well, which will help us determine whether we can present things graphically, numerically, or in alternative methods. Starting off with data points, over here, we have qualitative and quantitative data. So if you have qualitative data, it means that usually you have categories of data. Let's go with a scenario where you're trying to ask people for their favorite genre of video games. Maybe someone, maybe action is one of them, shooter is one of them, RPG is another. So these are not things that are quantitative, they're just categories. And you can bin the results into 3 different categories and try and test the frequency of each one. So that would be qualitative. There's also quantitative data, and underneath quantitative, there's 2 different types of data sets that we can have. We can have discrete data, or we can have continuous data. From the example we had before with temperature, because we can have 27.1, 27.2, we can have real number values for that data. We consider that continuous. If you have, let's say, quantitative data in which you're counting the number of books in a household, let's say, then you can't really have half a book or a quarter of a book, so that would give you discrete data. So these are just differences that you will have to know moving forward, especially when it comes to separating what kinds of descriptive statistics we can use for each. Okay, finally, onto the summary. Some of the key concepts and terminology from this lecture. First of all, make sure you can download and install Jupyter Notebook via Anaconda, or local install if you prefer. Brush up on your basic Python skills. We'll be going through some of that through the live lecture, as well as try out some practice problems in the workbook. Make sure you understand the big picture of data analysis. Familiarize yourself with the overall approach to data analysis. Know the difference between descriptive and inferential statistics, which we went through already. And also know the different types of variables and data so that you're prepared for the next chapter.